Hi, this is Jim Cranston from 7 Every Minute and 7everyminute.com, the podcast and website about reimagining your life. Thanks for joining me today to talk about, well, controlling your reality. So let's get started. If you like what you hear today, please leave a like, tell your friends, send me a message. And tonight we're going to be talking about how we react to the world around us. I know we've covered this before, but the juxtaposition of two events today really kind of made clear how our attitude and our response to the world can have such a profound effect upon our behavior. And I just realized I have to change one thing. Something was seeming very odd to me, and that's because it was odd. And so we can get something working. There we go. That looks much better now. I was looking in the wrong spot. I thought I don't normally look down. But so back to the program. So again, we've been talking about how we can react to the world around us. And I know we've covered this, like I said, we've covered this topic before, but the juxtaposition of two events today really made clear how our attitudes and responses to the world can have such a profound effect upon our behavior. And not just our personal behavior, but even the behavior of things that we can affect, even up to as far as the country and in some for people in certain positions of power, all the way to how it affects the world. And you got to remember too, some people, when they make a change, the change not only affects how they react to something, but it affects how they author things and write things. So a lot of times this behavior kind of becomes enshrined in law, as it were. But first, I just want to start with a quote from Cardinal Robert Francis Prevost, now known as Pope Leo XIV. To be a good shepherd means to be able to walk side by side with the people of God and to live close to them, not to be isolated. So we talk about this concept a lot, and that's because it's important. And avoiding isolation is important to us both as individuals, and it's also important to us as humans. As we're kind of wired to have other people around us, and when we try and live by ourselves, we can to a certain degree, but it does affect, it weighs on us after a while. Isolation and isolationism has become quite popular recently, however, but it's not especially healthy, nor does it reflect well upon one's personal approach to life. I was reading some pending congressional Senate bills, and there's a fun way to have an evening, and to me, the most noticeable part of the bills was that most of them were couched in us versus them sort of language. And the thems were called out somewhat in general terms, but the targets were, obviously crystal clear about who they were talking about. Earlier today, however, in the morning, I was reading about a columnist from the Wall Street Journal who recently retired for medical reasons. His name is Jonathan Clements, and he wrote over 1,000 columns on personal finance. His goal was to get everyday people to learn how to start investing so that they could have a better life and also a nicer retirement. Unfortunately, he has a rare and very bad cancer, and the prognosis is actually less than 12 months to live. But he's already at month 13, so he said he's actually pretty excited, which should already tell you a lot about the kind of person he is and the kind of attitude that he has. So I'm going to share a link here, and the link is so it's 7em.lank/John 1 or John 2 or John 3 or John 4. Those are the URLs that they're pointing to are pretty long, and there's 4 of them, so I just wanted to make up some short links that were easy to remember. And I know they're kind of clever names. I hope Jonathan isn't mad at me. I don't think he even ever went by John. I'm not positive. But it made the links shorter, and hopefully you can remember them. So 7em.lank/JON1 or JON2 or JON3 or JON4. So back to Jonathan. So he faced this kind of short expected remaining lifespan, and what did he do? Well, Jonathan worked with friends and supporters and some organizations to put together a program to teach disadvantaged young adults, 18 and up, who are also participating in a youth employment program around the Boston area, how to manage the money and how to set up a Roth IRA retirement plan. Now, we've talked about Roths before, just in passing. Roth retirement plans are the ones where you pay taxes on your money before you put it in, unlike a standard IRA. But then as the money grows, you don't pay any taxes when you take the money back out. So you can put in money, leave it sit there for hopefully 20, 30, 40 years. Now you have a big bundle of money sitting there, and you just take it out tax-free. So they're very nice if you're if you can start investing when you're young. So back to the plan itself. Additionally, that he's working with another group, and they're a place called I just lost it, JPAL, but he's working with another group, and they're going to do random samples um, out of that cohort of people, and they're going to give those people $1,000 grants to invest into a Roth IRA to help them get started. So a bunch of people, everybody gets education about the advantages of investing early and investing continually over your life. And then a select subset of them are going to get an additional $1,000 to start their investment. And then you may remember we've talked about a long time ago a great financier and author, John Bogle. He has passed away, but there's a memorial of the Center for Financial Literacy, the Bogle Center for Financial Literacy, and they're promoting the program as well. And donations can be made there if you want. That's one of the links. That's the first link, John 1. And so, he sat down and put this whole thing together. Worked with a bunch of people, put together a whole program that could make really a lifelong change in the world, even as he's diagnosed with having a very short time left in the world. But it goes on because the whole group of the cohort, they're going to be tracked after the program to see what their individual outcomes look like, and then that data is going to form the basis of optimizing an educational outreach program to try and help more young people realize the potential of saving and starting while they're young. So the analysis is done by this group, JPAL, which is the Poverty Action Lab at MIT, and at least two analysts are going to be working to provide solid results and to see how such an outreach can be improved. Best of all, it's not just a giveaway, but rather, since it's a teaching program, like I mentioned, the concept is a lot of the participants hopefully will come away with the real knowledge that it's worth investing, and here's a way, even if I'm only putting in $20 a week, I'm starting to invest regularly, and then they'll be able to feel confident enough that they can share that with their peers and spread it even farther than just the people who are in the program. So I read about the youth program this morning, and then I'm reading about some of the pending new Senate bills. And remember that you can always look up the Senate stuff. I should have it here. Oh, I didn't put that there. It is, let me get that 1 second. I apologize. Normally I have it right in front of me. But it should be, where art thou? Oop, is that it? There it is. Sorry. It is 7em.link/Congress. And the link isn't too bad, but that's, since you have the other ones already memorized, 7em.link. Congress brings you to where you can look up various pending bills and look up your representative and your congressperson and all that stuff. Good link to keep in mind. But I'm reading about all these possibilities of new laws, these possible new laws, and thinking about the attitudes behind these pending bills versus what the Pope said, which was, to walk side by side with the people of God and to live close to them and not to be isolated. And so I'm looking at these two different, very different approaches to life because, there's just this huge difference between the legislation I'm reading and then the stuff that Jonathan was doing. So it's a total difference, a complete difference. One is keep everyone away from me. That's the legislation. The other is bring everyone close to me. And that was actually from the quote from Pope Leo. And I looked at it from another perspective. The first one comes from a position of fear, while the second one comes from a position of strength and confidence of having the world be close to you. And the only thing that's really different between those two polar opposite approaches is how the people behind them reacted to their world. So, as we often say, you may not be able to control the reality, but you can control your response to it or your reaction to it. So that's why I'm talking about this again, because it's important to remember how much our beliefs and our attitudes affect our thinking and our actions even. I'd expect the senators authoring, the senators who are authoring those bills, they were probably thinking about them in terms of keeping people away. Keep these people away. Keep people who think this way away. Keep people who think or act that way away. The problem when you do this is then you miss all the ways that these targeted people could be, or perhaps actually already are, benefiting society or benefiting you personally even. It's much like the common knowledge filter. We've talked about that before. You probably learned most of your common knowledge when you're still a child. But unless you stop to review it occasionally, you may find that it's really kind of holding you back in unexpected ways, because a lot of common knowledge is just plain wrong. And a lot of these laws I see being written are based upon common knowledge. And now that they actually did the statistics, they're finding that a lot of the things that they claimed just aren't true. There's there's no other way to say it. A lot of these legislation that you see going on now, at the federal level in particular, it's based upon some assumptions of how people act, and they started tracking them, and they actually looked at the number of people who came into the country illegally in this case, and the crime rates, and they found that actually the crime rates are lower than the crime rates for the population taken at large. That's common knowledge, a good example of common knowledge. It's just plain wrong. It's not to say there's no bad actors, but the common knowledge was always that everything spiked tremendously. It did not. The number of people versus the amount of crime did not go the way that they said it was. But we're writing legislation based upon assuming that it did. And that is negativity in action. As we age, there's always new and sometimes, kind of exciting challenges. Some of them are laughable, like forgetting where you put your glasses or whatever, but some of them are truly a challenge, and they'll likely arrive no matter what. Now, if you've been living your whole life with a resilient and open mindset, chances are that as these things arise, you meet them and respond to them in the most positive way possible. That isn't to say life is totally awesome, but it probably is as awesome as you can make it. However, if you live with a negative attitude, then there's a double whammy waiting for you. First, whatever's going on will likely have a bigger negative impact on you right off the bat because you're already living with constant stress because of this negative attitude. However, probably inadvertently, you're not going to be looking for any possible positive outcomes. And when you don't look for something, right, it's pretty rare that you find it. So if the only thing you're thinking about is negative stuff, guess what you're going to find? You're going to find negative things. If you try and keep an open mind and a positive attitude, you're much more likely to find positive things around you. Right now, there's a lot of negativity going on at many different levels, whether it's wars, politics, the economy. There are many topics you can mention, and it's easy to find a negative interpretation. And again, I'm not saying everything is great, but the world is what it is. And very importantly, it's not what it used to be, which, as we've already talked about, usually isn't quite as good as we remember it. The good old days usually weren't quite as good as we like to think. But if you're surrounded by negativity, it's very difficult to be positive. But that's exactly the challenge you should accept, to look for the positive outlook. That doesn't mean ignoring things. You may be positive that you can foster change, and that's still great. But if you succumb to the negative all the time, then you'll feel hopeless, and that's very destructive at every level. If you pay attention, you'll see that many people who are still energetic and engaged all around you, they may like things as they're going, but they may oppose things, and they still seem positive. And how can they do that? The big difference is, in both cases, they're working to make a change and engage with the world. Pope Leo didn't say everyone in the world is fun to be around, just that we should walk side by side and live close to them. That's what fosters understanding and forms the basis of positive change, both in ourselves and in the world in general. So don't ignore the negativity per se, but embrace it and raise above it. When you let the world into your life, you see both sides, and you realize that you do have a choice of how you react to it, and then you can chart a way forward. Living in isolation is obviously lonely. We're social creatures, and sometimes the healthiest thing to do is take a little bit of a chance and engage with the world and try to shape it into something that's more aligned with our vision of the future. So that's it for the evening. Thank you very much for joining me. Remember, next month, I'll be hosting the free webinar called Smart Goals for Life. In this interactive session, we'll explore and expand upon everything we've done so far related to SMART goals, provide some practical worksheets and exercises, help you apply these concepts to your own goals. And whether you're considering retirement, changing careers, whatever life transition you're going through, this webinar will give you some concrete tools to create and achieve goals that truly matter to you. We'll work through some real examples together, and you leave with a personalized action plan that you've created by yourself to meet your very own needs. If there's anything in particular you want to cover, please drop me a note. We can certainly include it. So stay tuned for the specific date in May and links for signups. Please register even if you can't attend, because all the registrants will receive a recording of the session and everyone gets entered into a raffle for a new product that we're working on. It's all exciting stuff. So your homework tonight is to think of some negative attitude that you've heard recently and how it affected you. Then think about a positive corollary to that that you could embrace instead. And extra points if you take that idea and write down the next step you could to make it more actionable. And of course, as always, please remember the wars, all the things going on, political, social unrest here and there. But remember, everything is a small snapshot in time. And so remember to keep perspective on how things are going. Remember that you always have an option to make a change. And as always, we have links to ukr7.com, and that is where there's a number of links to donate to the people of Ukraine and help them in the situation over there. And then, of course, there is WCK.org. That's the World Central Kitchen. They work in areas, disaster areas. They're usually one of the first, if not the first group in after disaster goes through like a hurricane or something like that. Great group of people, ukr7.com, wck.org. And we talk about this a lot. There's stuff going on all around the world, and there's also stuff going on in your own neighborhood, your own city. You probably have groups nearby who you could help either with money or with time or volunteering. And even if you're just not in a position, either time-wise or money-wise, to volunteer or donate anything right now, remember that we all have the option of making life a little better for everyone. Just something as simple as smiling at somebody when we meet them on the street. That can change their day in a way more positive than you ever imagined. So, ukr7.com, wck.org, both great places to take a look at. Local organizations, even just if you can't do those things, smile at somebody, make the world a little bit better place just in your own area. As always, thank you for stopping by. If you found something interesting or useful, please pass it along, and please subscribe and hit that like button. And if not, please drop me a comment of what you'd like to hear. Have a great week. Remember to live the life that you dreamed of, because that's the path to true contentment. Love and encouragement to everyone. See you next week on 7 Every Minute and 7everyminute.com. Thank you.